And no, this actually is a really, I like this session. Probably see my desktop there. I like this session because it's got some good interaction. People coming up with some ideas of intersection changes to get a better safe system alignment, lots of stuff for people to do. So it's kind of trivia interactive anyway. So it's just as good. Kathy will monitor the chat behind the scenes. There's only a little bit of content before people are doing stuff anyway. So, okay, we're recording as usual, and welcome back. So I thought the first session was really good, and I love the interaction, the questions, the comments, the chat going on behind the scenes. You're also enthusiastic and engaged about road safety and the safe system. It was just wonderful. This session, we're gonna delve more into that kinetic energy stuff we talked about with crash forces and yeah, so angles, speeds, masses, trying to really understand biomechanics of injury in crashes, which is now, as you remember, a central element of our decision making around transport, which is sort of a huge change to the way traditionally people had operated. But we'll look at that for intersections and generally characteristics of intersections that align highly with safe system principles. We'll also look at areas of mid-block, so between intersections, and what aligns highly with safe system principles. So interesting sort of note there is that I talk there about align highly. And I think that's an important just terminology thing for you to have a think about. The idea of the safe system being some sort of binary thing, I don't think is appropriate. So, you know, when I hear sort of people saying we can't do that, it's not safe system, sort of cringe a little bit and say, well, you know, that's, it doesn't align highly with safe system principles. I'd agree with that, but I can't, you know, and you know, yeah. Anyway, I just think that it's important to understand it's a spectrum, and we know what is very highly aligned with safe system principles. Is it perfect safe system? Well, probably not. I don't think we've got anything out there that's sort of perfect safe system, or know of it. Maybe like complete sort of blocking off of cars into a pedestrianized area or something like that. Maybe that's sort of the highest alignment. Maybe full safe system perfect, but just think about that as an alignment, a spectrum. Now, there was one thing I thought would be important to contextualize these safe system assessments within transport projects, and also because of the other independent assessment techniques available, and there are lots of them. And Kathy, I can't remember whether we put out that a fact sheet to everybody on the differences between a few of them, but road safety audits is that big one that's been around for 30 plus years in New Zealand, and you've got lots of road safety auditors, lots of, this is integrated into your projects. People are fairly comfortable with the process. It happens. Okay, it's a different thing. We run a road safety audit course similar to this one with differences, and some of you have done that, and some of you hopefully will be doing that in the future. But there's also design reviews, and these are sort of the internal technical processes of a designer, designs up something and hands it to somebody else to do a review. They're part of quality management processes, but recheck the calculations, check the standards. Did that? Yep. Is that meet? You know, does that all make sense? Will that connect there? And so that's an important part of the development of the process. And we do get some overlap between road safety auditing and design review, but certainly there's areas of road safety audit that are not looked at in design review, and vice versa. Safe system assessments, well, they sort of take on some design review bits, some road safety audit bits, and a lot of stuff that's not covered in either. And that might be either content specific stuff or the way it's presented or used. There's safety and design, which is more about, can it be built safely? Can it be managed, maintained safely? Can it be decommissioned safely? And it's a lot of occupational health and safety style thinking around new assets, new bits of infrastructure. And then there's some sort of check for the ability for all road users of all abilities to be able to use the infrastructure that's being built. In a lot of jurisdictions, it's called a Disability Discrimination Act audit or a accessibility audit. I must admit, I don't actually know what it's called in New Zealand. So if somebody can fill me in on what, if you are, building a new bus interchange and you've got an independent person to look at the accessibility, that the people in wheelchairs, vision impaired, could use the facility safely, then that's what that is. So just lots of techniques, and I just wanted to contextualize that and put safe system assessments in there. Okay, intersections. Let's start with intersections. And intersections are a point on our road network with increased crash risk. I'm sure that sort of sounds logical. But the increased crash risk isn't just this incident that's happening there. I mean, that is a significant part of the crash risk. But we also see crash risk going up associated with runoff road crashes. And the reason for that is that we have an area of high turbulence in the system where you have vehicles, if they enter the intersection incorrectly, other vehicles try to avoid them and run off the road. Sometimes they clip them, lose control and go off the road. Sometimes they hit and the two of them go off the road. And we also have a lot of fixed infrastructure around intersections. So it could be signal pedestals, it could be power poles, it could be lighting poles. In fact, next time you're out looking at an intersection, have a look at the amount of poles and things around the intersection as it's just a spot where they seem to congregate due to a number of factors. So we've got more people leaving the road at these locations and more fixed hazards, point source hazards at these locations. Also, sometimes, quite often, have drainage structures and things around the intersection and the like. So there's quite a few roadside hazards. We also have then pedestrians crossing these areas, cyclists trying to navigate through, and vehicles turning, and of course motorcyclists going through like vehicles. So we've got just a whole lot of challenges. And if you utilize some of the risk rating, road risk rating tools or the like, which you don't need to use for this course or anything like that, or for safe system assessments really, but they will often spit out a sort of risk profile of a road over its length, and you'll often see them sort of go along like this. And of course, each of these is an intersection. And that's where there's this sort of spike in risk. So Monash University Accident Research Centre came out with these sort of high-level principles for intersection design to get higher alignment with safe system principles. And they, they're pretty high level, but I think they're interesting, and they're always a nice starting point, I suppose, as you think about intersection design and the management of your road network. So we've got principles there of fewer vehicles and fewer intersections. And you remember at the end of last session, I talked about exposure times likelihood times severity or consequence as the way that we thought about risk under the safe system assessment frame. Now, these first two, they are really impacting on that exposure, because under a safe system assessment, we think about exposure as just the number of people exposed to that crash. So it could be the number of vehicles going through there, the number of pedestrians going through there, the number of cyclists, but it's the number, of going through that intersection or that conflict point. Then, if you've got fewer conflict points, we actually attribute this to likelihood. And then we get into the whole severity aspect, and we're talking about, okay, so you're trying to have few vehicles, fewer intersections, fewer conflict points. Now, can we, with the conflict, make it less severe? So we're talking then about trying to keep things within those biomechanically tolerable levels that we define. So we're talking about around the 50 km/h mark for that 90-degree collision. If you can get more angle on that, we talk about between 50 and 70 km/h. This is for passenger vehicle crashes. And what do I mean by more angle on that? Well, let's just draw it over here, all right? If you can have a crash like that, right, between cars, the energy is dissipated out into the environment more. Some of you are going, oh, I remember this from year 11 vectors in my physics class. And that's right. I mean, it's a bounce off more than a pushing of the energy directly into the other vehicle. If you've got pedestrians or cyclists involved, we're really talking down at that 30 km/h mark or below as the operating speed, the collision speed we're looking at. It doesn't necessarily need to be the speed limit. I mean, that's nice, and I think that has many other advantages and the like, but we're thinking about the operating speed around conflict points of that or below. And then if you can't be meeting these, you have to sort of fundamentally rethink the design to sort of negate the risk. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. In the last module, I gave you that colored chart with lots of crash types and then crash speeds on the top, and you can sort of gather that idea of severity out of that. And I really encourage you to look back at that when you're doing your assessments. Use that as a point of reference. I've popped this other table in here, which has some information around that, sort of, again, the 50 km/h, 90-degree crash. I mean, this is passenger vehicle to passenger vehicle. We're talking about now. We would do a lot more on pedestrians and cyclists in the next module. 60 kilometers an hour for that sort of 52 to 128. Well, this is pretty precise out of ChemX, which is the kinetic energy management model. We don't need to be this precise in a safe system assessment. But it's good to sort of know this and have it as a reference. Head-on rear ends, we're in the 70 km/h, and it says here not feasible to operate an intersection at 80 km/h at grade, but you can, because these are really a delta V, okay? A change in velocity. So if you are able to accelerate a vehicle sufficiently that the crash happens with a difference in speed there that is within tolerable levels, that initial crash force interchange, like the force being pushed from one vehicle to another, can be within tolerable levels. Absolutely. Yes, you got to think about secondary crashes, running off the road and all sorts of things. Absolutely. because the speeds, the overall speed is high, but the exchange of energy there is within tolerable level. So when you're doing a safe system assessment, you can look at crashes, look at sort of conflict diagrams and crashes you expect to happen, get a rough idea of the angle. You don't need to be this precise, that's for sure. You can just generally say, what's the sort of angle I think this crash is going to happen at? So I've got a vehicle coming out here and I've got a vehicle there. And okay, that's about a 90-degree angle, isn't it? So for that one, I really want to keep it below 50 kilometers per hour for vehicle to vehicle. Okay, and they come over here. Okay, there's more angle on that now. There'll be a bit of a bounce off crash. So that one I'm more thinking around the 60 kilometer per hour as my threshold speed. You're thinking then, the pedestrians are all going to be crossing here and they're turning in. What about that one? I want to keep that one below 30 kilometers an hour. So you're starting to see there that you're thinking about crashes, bringing them back to a relative crash speed and what we call the safe system threshold speeds. And I note that was a question in your quiz, which maybe the term used of safe system threshold speed was a bit it wasn't probably explained with enough precision in the previous module, but that was that 10% line that we were talking about for those. Let me go back to a red pen on this. Those S curves that we had, and we drew a 10% line where things go really bad really fast. Well, those were the safe system threshold speeds, and that's sort of what I'm pointing out here. 50 kilometers per hour for right angle, 30 kilometers per hour pedestrians and cyclists. 60 wasn't in this curve, but that's sort of sitting, pushing this up, and then head on at 70. So the collision, I just briefly mentioned the secondary crash impact. So it is kind of rare to get a crash at that squarely into the middle of the target vehicle, and then it sort of goes off. There's so many, weird ways that this all happens, starting to try to avoid clipping, hitting the back, sometimes into the middle of it, and all sorts of things happening. And the Centre for Automotive Safety Research at the University of Adelaide did a big study on crashes at intersections and secondary crashes around. The two vehicles do strike in some description or another, but then the next crash where they hit fixed objects, power poles, signal pedestals, into drainage culverts, whatever it is, and they sort of plotted them onto this axis, and you can see that the majority of the crashes happen out there. I don't think they needed to do the research for that. I mean, that's pretty obvious, but you do see some clip offs of some other areas and bits and pieces, but it's something worth remembering, and it's worth really always bringing things back to these figures as we've been doing. Okay, I'm going to pause there, and before I jump into explaining an exercise for you to do, and it'll be a good opportunity to get that third coffee for the morning as well while you're doing it, if you want. But I'll just check and see if there's any questions or comments that I need to deal with.
Thank you, Ken. No, yes, you do. Just a quick one on the quiz. I have fixed the quiz now, so it should stop asking you to check your answer. And yes, I agree, Jeffrey, that was somewhat annoying. So let me know if that still comes up after today's session, but it should be fine. How closely do collision speeds relate to the speed travelled prior to the collision? Obviously depends on reaction time, etc.
Yeah, it's a really good question there. And so in a safe system assessment, you somewhat have to get your mind in the sense that the driver has not reacted. So the utilization of reaction time essentially is reliant on the human not failing, if that makes sense. So reaction time, yeah, is you kind of put that aside. So if I'm looking at analyzing an intersection and I'm analyzing crashes, I'm going to assume that the crash happens at free operating speed. Okay. Now we know that that does happen. And we know, yeah, so that we do know that a lot of crashes also happen where people have reacted and they've braked and they hit at lower speeds and the like. Okay. But we're really, under a safe system, looking at the elimination of that high-end death and serious injury, and that's going to occur from those ones where they are not reacting. Now, if you take a signalised intersection or a give-way intersection, for example, it'll be the one where the driver's driving along and the vehicle shoots through the give-way and they hit it, right? And there's really not any reaction time or the like because they're sort of just driving along, doing their thing. So the challenge you've got when you're doing a safe system assessment is to say, well, there's so many scenarios of crashes. There's like infinite possibilities of these crashes that could happen at these intersections. But we need to focus our attention at the high-end severity ones of the higher speed. And so you really do focus your attention and pretty much on no reaction time. Now, for run-off road crashes, slightly different. You do wash off a bit of speed, not a huge amount, a bit of speed just in entering the roadside and yawing and sliding and these sort of things. So there's a bit of wash off before striking the tree, but not a huge amount. But that's not really a reaction requirement of the thing. Good question though. Okay, I'm going to give you a little exercise to do. Let me explain it, and then I'll get you working on it. Okay, here's an intersection. It's a major highway, arterial highway. It's in the sort of outer skirts of a fairly major city. It's 70 kilometers per hour on the main road. It has 22,000 vehicles a day and about 10% CV, I'd say CV, heavy vehicle, commercial vehicle. Then we've got a side road here, which is 50 kilometers per hour. It's got about 2,000 vehicles a day. We've got a bus stop here. We've got a shared user path here. Drainage culvert here, so water goes sort of in and out that way. There's all housing, residential. There's a school down this road. These are service roads here, two-way service roads. Let's have a look from the ground level. So there you go. You can see that's the intersection there. We've got the bus stops there. You can see the road comes in there. The service roads there. There's some lighting. This is the other side. There you can see that bit of a drain structure out there. There's that shared use path that I was talking about. There's the intersecting road comes out here. So what you're going to be asked to do over the next 5 or 6 minutes is have a think about how do we eliminate death and serious injury at this intersection going forward? We want you to eliminate death and serious injury, get us as close as possible to elimination of death or serious injury. I'm going to constrain you a little bit in your assignment because I'm going to put a budget limit on you, like real life. And you're going to have $3 million to work with. Okay. Now, some of you are going, well, I don't know what I can buy for $3 million. I'm not sure about that. Don't worry. I am your instant cost estimator tool. So if you come up with an idea, you can just pop it into the chat and put, cost question mark, and instantly you will be provided with a cost estimate for that, whatever you want. Now, this next one is you can't close the intersection, okay? The community consultation has been done, and the community consultation has been done, and it is just, it can't happen to close this. In fact, vehicles need to be able to turn out this way, and they need to be able to turn in from there and turn in there. So you've got to have, pretty much all access. The next one is that you are operating in your current political framework. So, and by that I mean, if you're working in a council or in Wakatahi, or if you are, a consultant working for those in the area you live, if you are proposing something highly radical, like, I don't know, everybody must travel at 5 kilometers per hour through there, I'm going to ask you to tell me how on earth you're going to make that get through this political system and improved by all of your superiors and the like. Now, I see some people are already starting to put stuff in there, but you've jumped the gun because I haven't finished even explaining what you've got to do.
Ken, you know how New Zealand operates.
Yeah, look at them go.
Head of the pack, and Marcus has taken over as the cost estimator. Just FYI, he's throwing out prices left, right, and centre. It's pretty accurate too. $4 million for a roundabout. Happy with that? Yeah,
a bit more probably, just due to some services, land acquisition, but he's in the ballpark. You can't afford it. That's for certain with your budget. The last thing I want to say before we need to start to answer some of these questions is that anything you propose, right, you have to put either an E, an L, or an S next to it to say, is this going to improve things because I'm influencing the exposure to crashes, or the likelihood of crashes, or the severity of crashes? So I don't know, if you said, we need to improve the lighting. Well, that would be likelihood. So you say improve lighting, brackets L, for likelihood. Okay. This is I want you to start practicing getting your head in the space of being able to categorize between exposure, likelihood, and severity. Very important for a safe system assessment. Right. Let's go back to the chat now. Where are we at? So we've done some cost estimating of a roundabout. So that's very expensive.
Traffic lights.
Traffic lights are pretty well set up for traffic lights from a civil infrastructure perspective and the like, and $2 million for traffic lights.
Okay, what about
traffic? So that's signalisation of the full intersection.
Yeah, a stop sign cost.
A stop sign, so changing it from a give way to a stop sign, for example, and we'll have a chat about that. That will cost you $2,000.
Bargain. Raised safety platform cost.
So raised safety platform is $300,000. Might sound like a lot, but there's some drainage works that you'd have to do associated with just putting a raised platform in. So, and some signage and a few other things you'd have to do.
More detail required, please, Ken. Is that per leg or for all 3 legs?
Yeah, they said that. Yeah, I was asked raised safety platforms.
Platforms.
Platforms. Now, yes. We can do a second leg for another 200,000, so 500 for $500,000 for 2 legs, and if you want a third leg on that, another 150,000. 650 for you because I like you.
In New Zealand dollars?
And these are all in New Zealand dollars.
Very good, very good. Okay.
Probably some of them are saying bargain prices because I've sort of used these prices for a while now. Inflation.
Would it be great to get you, you just spit out a quote in no time. How much to raise the whole intersection?
750,000.
Okay. Are you allowed to cut down gum trees?
Well, you can. It's going to cost you another 750,000 for native vegetation offsets, and it's probably going to add a couple of years to your project in approvals and the like. And you're chopping down a lovely gum tree with wonderful little possums that live in it, and all sorts of things.
Okay. We don't want to talk about it. How about red light cameras alongside the traffic signals? I'm not sure if that's a cost question, but it could be.
I thought you were implying that it's a negative cost, as in we make money out of that.
It's a return on investment, that one.
No, it's another 500,000 for those cameras.
And possums are exotic in New Zealand.
Yes, I realised as I was saying possum that the New Zealanders would be like, oh, even more reason to chop the damn thing down.
Oh, okay. Cost of a Lilo plus U-turn facilities.
Left in, left out.
Left in, left out. Thank you.
Yeah. Left in, left out plus U-turn facilities. It's $1 million because you need to create these right turn storage slots further up, and it's a bit of a mess.
Okay. How much for traffic signals, no right turning out of side road, and raised platform crosswalks with shared crossings?
Well, you've got to be able to turn right out of the side road. That was one of the things that we established with our community consultation and politics, and the minister is very hot to trot on this. But the rest of it is 2.887 million.
Budget. Do you mean no right turn out of the service road? So tell us again.
Okay, so that's now 2.92 million for no right turn out of the service road, which is fine. You can play with those service roads as much as you want. Was there a cost there for undergrounding power poles around the intersection?
Yes.
Yeah. So all of the power poles around the intersection is $4.7 million to underground a lot of it. As utility providers, they got us. Yep.
You're not a fan of the utility providers?
No, I'm considering
becoming
unplugging.
one?
I'm unplugging and living in a hut with no power, no water. Then, although I wouldn't be able to run these sessions, so.
Okay, I think people are having a good think about it now, and there's already some responses in there. So should we give everyone maybe a 3-minute break to jot in some more answers, Don't forget your exposure, likelihood, or severity next to that, and have a quick break.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see you back here in 3 minutes and pop your ideas in. Thanks. Good fun. All right. Let's have a look at what people's ideas are. And we'll have a bit of a chat about this. I think we'll use this intersection as a little sort of enduring case study throughout today. So, seeing there, the idea of traffic signals seems to come up a bit here. I mean, we're bouncing around between roundabouts and traffic signals, I see. That's interesting. Early on there, we've had somebody suggest a shared path underpass, which is good. Maybe utilizing this drainage structure. I like that idea. That always makes me happy. Utilize existing infrastructure. If you've already built a grade separation, it's a grade separation for water. Why could we not use it for vulnerable road users? That's a good way to change your exposure. Now, some of you are probably sort of squirming in your seats at the moment. You can't. Oh, it's going to be dark and people are going to get stabbed in there. And oh my God, what if it rains? There'll be drownings and all sorts of things. It's like, well, calm down. Let's work that one through. Yes, I agree. There's a personal safety challenge you have to work through. So lighting and potentially even cutting a little, lighting hole in there with some nice barrier system or something to do that. But there's really great examples of utilizing drainage infrastructure, bridges that are all existing and need minor modifications, and you just get wonderful facilities. You don't it's not sort of obvious how good it is, but the idea of doing a shared path underpass, from the start would be hugely expensive. Now, the challenge, I suppose, on this particular one, it's not quite deep enough and there'd be some other issues. So it's probably not quite practical in this, and certainly it would cost more than the 3 million in this particular case. But I love the idea, I love the thinking, and without having in-depth knowledge of this, you can't make that call. Don't dismiss it straight away, I reckon. Always ponder it. And actually, Queensland Department of Transport and Main Roads up there has a pretty wonderful design document guidance on how to sort of do this sort of stuff and how to work through the flooding and the personal safety and a few other things that are just some things to work through. Anyway, so nice thinking there. Okay, some others are sort of talking about roundabouts and some barriers and some barriers around these big culvert things. Now, so barriers are an interesting one in terms of do they influence exposure, likelihood, or severity? People might be thinking, exposure, because people aren't now exposed to the crash into the thing, or people might be thinking, well, likelihood, but the actual answer is severity. And the reason for that is because when we're thinking about exposure or likelihood or severity, we're thinking about that particular crash type. And the crash type is run-off road crash, okay? And if you run off the road and you hit a barrier, you have been involved in a run-off road crash, okay? It's just that running off the road and hitting that barrier and sliding along the barrier is far less severe than running off the road and landing in a culvert and stopping abruptly, or running off the road and hitting a tree. So this is all about the severity of crash when you talk about barrier systems, okay? So absolutely, brilliant, wonderful alignment with safe system principles, but it's all due to the fact that it reduces the severity of crash. Then we've got some people talking about raised tables, raised platforms, raised intersections, and that's good. That's that just shows how advanced New Zealand is in the thinking around the design and management of the road network, and especially these sort of larger volume arterial roads. Certainly, most jurisdictions around Australia and around certainly places like the US or the like, the idea of having vertical deflection raised on a road like this is just outrageous, in their opinion, of the traditional people managing and operating these things, because freight buses, emergency vehicles and the like, and you don't do that on these types of roads. But I think we're changing there. We're changing, aren't we? And certainly we'll have a look at some of that shortly. Just looking through ideas here. I'm not going to get through everybody's, but I am absolutely loving what we're seeing here. A lot of people, sort of landing on the signalizing of it. Some stuff in there around sort of better delineation, tactile indicators and markings and the like. They're all likelihood factors. They're all going to reduce the likelihood. Now, signalizing the intersection is all about the likelihood. You may be tempted to say there's an exposure element to signalizing an intersection because people aren't going to be exposed because they've got their dedicated time. What we need to remember is to account for human failure, red light running and the like. So actually we just attributed to a likelihood reduction. I'll talk about that more in a bit. Some really good ones here, sort of speed management, and a really good one in here talking about speed management influencing both likelihood and severity in amongst other dot points. And that's great. That is true, because if you can get speeds down, you will give people more chance to avoid a crash, but you will also reduce the severity of any that do, because the speeds will be lower. So Mike's come up with an interesting point around redistribution of risk and redistribution of traffic. And if you put signals in at one spot, that will alter the travel patterns potentially of the area. This becomes particularly sort of relevant in a safe system assessment in understanding what is the scope of your assessment. How far do you go with trying to assess? Well, okay, if our safe system assessment was really looking at this, I mean, are we going to be looking 3 intersections down the road to understand how that's going to impact on that? And there is no real clear guidance on it, but you certainly, if within a safe system assessment, if you are able to get your network transport modeling and understand what's going to happen as a result of different things, it can help out a little bit in that. Okay. And then Andrew pointing out some of those amazing crash videos out there and sort of seeing what actually happens in the real world. And I still call them the mistakes being made. And some people will say mistake is a generous word, but no, those are humans and they are actually doing it. And yeah, you scratch your head, but that's what we're dealing with. Thank you for the input there. I'm going to utilize some of the things that popped in there. There was a lot of great information I didn't, get to specifically read out, but I've had a scan through that, and it's wonderful. But let's talk about some of that stuff that you've mentioned. So a lot of people talking about signalizing the intersection. To a degree, that makes some sense. Okay, first of all, you couldn't afford to acquire land and relocate services and create big roundabouts and those sort of things, the cost. The second interesting one is an unbalanced flow. And we saw that intersection there was really unbalanced in terms of, low volume on this one, but high volume on this one. And signalizing gives that ability to operate and cater for that. When the queue gets long enough there, then it goes out. But if there's nobody waiting here, you're not disturbing the flow of traffic. So traffic operations engineers, they love a set of traffic signals because they can do that. They can, get their sophisticated algorithms to make decisions around how to operate the lights. But what we're doing there is really just playing with the likelihood of crashes. And we're saying to a vehicle coming up here, hey, stop, please, because they're coming out. And we really put a huge burden of trust on this vehicle to actually do what this light says. And certainly the majority do follow that, but there is some that slip through, and the speed of that incident is quite high. And it's interesting when you analyze death and serious injury around cities, and you sort of go outside the central CBD. Well, yeah, but you go outside the central CBD, get into the outer area, and you can do this for any of your cities. Do it for Christchurch, Auckland, Hamilton. Doesn't matter. You'll find pretty much the same thing, where the concentration of death and serious injury, all these hotspots in this one, which is actually out of Melbourne, they're all signalised intersections, big signalised intersections. And that's interesting, isn't it? Because there is a tendency for traffic engineers and those making decisions around the operation of the network to feel that that is the ultimate intersection treatment. Maybe until, one day off in the very distant future, it gets grade separated, gets a, some sort of flyover. But really, it's okay. We've got to signals. We've done mast arms. We've done fully controlled right turns with LED lights. We've put a red light and a speed camera in there. We've done our job with the infrastructure. The people surely have to, surely have to do better. The thing is that we just don't seem to learn, and it's been going on for 50 years more, that people just run through the red lights for a multitude of reasons. But when they run through them, they're going at speed and they're going at horrible angles, and we just see death and serious injury. And the funny thing is that we keep building them, and it's somehow expecting that it's going to be different. So finally, we started to say, well, this is not right. But a roundabout has these different characteristics. And I love the fact that a lot of you did start to say, well, hey, can we afford a roundabout? Can we get that roundabout in? And that's, it's some road safety engineering 101 there, really, to understand that a roundabout performs so much better for crashes involving passenger vehicles. We'll talk about roundabouts and pedestrians and cyclists next module in much more detail. Not as much benefit and some challenges, but certainly for passenger vehicles. When a vehicle approaches a roundabout, what does it do? It slows down. It slows down because there is a big lump of infrastructure directly in its path. It has to navigate around this. And the angles of crashes are better. When they do crash, you see these sort of nice angled crashes happen. But roundabouts cost a lot more. You couldn't afford that. Look at the land take here. This is not the same site, obviously, but just showing you the size of land you sort of need to get. The civil infrastructure works, the lighting required, the drainage. It's a big, expensive exercise to build a roundabout. You also have challenges with unbalanced flow at roundabouts. And that's really where you will see one leg just dominate if you have high traffic volumes, and they don't perform that well from that movement of cars through. Now, that may not be your objective, but on some roads it maybe will. But I often question, and I say, well, have you appropriately metered the roundabout and tried to improve the situation? And by that I mean, for example, you could create it's a nice way to do it. You put a pedestrian operated signal there, maybe a nice link to a shared path here if you're on that. And then traffic signals on that. And put a loop in the road down here, which is, going to detect vehicles. And so as your vehicles queue up here, because they're not getting a go through, they trigger that, your lights can change, stop the vehicles, flush out these ones. Yes, a few are going to have to store in here, but you're getting some nice flushing out, and then off you go again. So by adding, it's called metering the roundabout, adding signals to a roundabout, you can extend its life in terms of that traffic operations a huge amount. And then you can start metering other legs. Okay. And you also get the benefit of cyclists and pedestrians having a nice crossing. So don't dismiss roundabouts because of unbalanced flow or congestion related issues immediately. Have a think about can you extend that, because they have such wonderful safety benefits. And that cost, you've got, can we make them smaller? Can we improve things from a cost perspective? Well, I like to look at these UK examples, and where they use these sort of painted circles for roundabouts, and they perform pretty well. Now, why on earth do they perform pretty well? But the reason, and it's slightly nuanced, is here that everybody approaching this doesn't believe they have ultimate priority. And what I mean by sort of that ultimate priority is a green light. Or if you're driving along a main carriageway and there's side roads that have give way signs or stop signs, you just people continue and they drive at a certain speed, and they're just driving. Okay. But as soon as you break this up and they go, slow down, look around, because I might have to give way. So this is sort of the UK equivalent of the US four-way stop. And I think there's actually quite a few four-way stops in New Zealand around different places. Be interested if people can maybe share me a Street View link or a photo of a four-way stop from New Zealand. I haven't actually personally seen one when I've been there, but I'm told that they're around. But it's great. Break up that continual movement of priority, and it's so important, because what we see is people driving in all states of consciousness. Half asleep, they're intoxicated, they've worked a double shift, they're driving to their brother's wedding in Napier, whatever it is, and they're just, they're not with it. And so we need to try to disrupt that driving through at high speed, these areas of high risk. You get worried about straight line running through there. You can slow people down with raised platforms and things on the approach, maybe even integrate a raised pedestrian crossing onto that. What a beautiful little thing that would be. So there's lots of options. Oh, I think that is a conversation just happening there that about deflection and lack of deflection and straight lining through. Yeah, I just love putting some vertical deflection on approaches and these things. But these are slightly different road environments to what we're we were dealing with and what we were thinking about. But I'm just sort of talking through some of the ways of thinking about these things. Little bit of recap of Road Safety Engineering 101. Hopefully anybody who studied engineering did this in first year, maybe. Anybody who didn't sort of study engineering, I hope they're getting this in your organization at least. But roundabouts versus traffic signals. Roundabouts have less conflict points, less spots to actually crash compared to a set of traffic signals. Each dot represents a crash potential. Stock standard crash point analysis. The angle of crash is better. We talked about that. Better to be involved in that crash than that crash, for sure. And this was the one that this amazing ability for that disruption of priority and physical infrastructure and deflection of vertical or horizontal that will bring people back from whatever daydream they're in, whatever fight they've had with their partner, and they're thinking only about that, or drug affected, intoxicated. It is just absolutely amazing how effective a roundabout is to go bang. They're back with us, at least for this little point. They look around and they, maybe make decisions, and sometimes they go a little awry with going through too fast or these sorts of decisions, but they're really actually quite with it and alert and seeing things and generally slow down. I've seen lots of links come in. This is great. Thank you. I think four-way stops in New Zealand. Woohoo! Kathy, can you give a prize to everybody that put a four-way stop example?
No, everyone's gonna. No. Hold on. Are you moving wombats intentionally? I think. Are you going back and forth? Sometimes you do a bit of back and forth action, don't you?
I don't know if I did. It's certainly not intentional. If it's on the same slide that I go back to, you only count it once. It's only one wombat. I apologize if I did do that.
Okay.
You know what? We gave a little bit of leeway either side on the wombat count in your quiz. So
yeah.
If you accidentally counted one twice, you'll still get full marks.
Yes. Yeah, look, lots of interesting discussion about sometimes the people are just a step ahead of you, Ken, or they know where you're going. Mini painted roundabouts typically have poor deflection and hence high approach speeds. But Andrew says you can counter that with raised table at the approaches, which you talked about. Tony says we recently installed a domed mini roundabout at an intersection outside our office, which had a crash every few weeks. Now it hasn't had one in 6 months. But Reese did the opposite, took out a roundabout for a raised intersection and have had multiple crashes.
Oh, for a raised intersection. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Interested in hearing a bit about that. We usually see pretty good performance with raised intersections, but I suppose that does show you've got to be very context sensitive, specific, looking around at what the specifics are. Yeah. Okay. I'll keep going because I'm going to talk a little bit about some of that. Unless there's anything else, Kathy?
No, there's just more four-way stop examples. So you have a plethora of those now, Ken, to study after the session.
That's great.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. I was talking about roundabouts, and just sort of as a little aside, I like to have a look at how people are really trying to make roundabouts because of this wonderful safety benefits, keep as much safety and try to integrate them in. And two-lane roundabouts start to get a little bit more problematic due to some of that straight lining that was mentioned in the chat there. People running that straight line through, and also you get these lane change, weaving, last minute turn, big challenges that come out. And I like this. I mean, this little thing shows the radius of your roundabout speed. This is from a study that was done. 2-lane roundabouts and single lane roundabouts, and you can see the big difference in through speed. I mean, that's really interesting. The really interesting one though is the turbo roundabout, the green line there. And a turbo roundabout is a 2-lane roundabout. And I'll show you a few turbos and some safe system snippets on turbos if you're interested. Turbo roundabout has these raised concrete separators within the circulating carriageway. So if you want to do a right turn, you've got to get in this right lane and you sort of go around and go out like that. Or a left turn, you get in this left bit and you go. And what that does is it amazingly brings the performance of this 2-lane roundabout back to the performance of a 1-lane roundabout from a safety perspective. So it's pretty exciting. Here's another turbo, and I think it's an interesting photo. And one thing I just absolutely love about this photo is this crash angle or this conflict angle. Yeah, this looks like the truck has made a mistake and entered the intersection. And we see that the white car there, we know if they crash, it's going to not be severe. We know the speed will be low. And we know the angles. Yet if that had been a square T intersection and a mistake had been made, the angle's bad, speed's bad, going to be bad. And it's all, interesting sort of radial roundabout. You can see some in and then turn, rather than often we'll do these tangential style roundabout design where they come in, but we won't talk details of roundabout design at this stage. Now this is out of the Netherlands, and it's a turbo roundabout, and it's quite amazing, isn't it? I mean, you're just like, wow, okay. You sort of think, oh my God. And I was talking to a Dutch engineer who we had brought out to do cyclist at roundabouts and have some discussions around that. And I showed this and I said to him, well, I just found this fascinating, because in Australia we would have a large signalised intersection between these two roads, and they would probably operate at 70 or 80 kilometres an hour. It may eventually get grade separated, but it's and then somewhat the same in New Zealand. It has been in these big areas, and the Dutch engineer was just absolutely gobsmacked. Could not fathom that we would possibly do that. It's like, but what this speed? What about the death and serious injury to your community? And like, how would you? Just could not comprehend that you would possibly ever do something like that. Yet we just seem to do it so often. They said, yeah, I mean, if you're going to have an at-grade intersection, you're going to have to slow vehicles down. And this one, turbo, and it's signalised. The whole thing's signalised, and it's just about having somebody approach this set of traffic signals. And there's a roundabout, and they're going to have to slow down to navigate around this. They're going to wake up. They're going to crash at better angles if they crash. It's all going to be slower. And that's just how they operate. It's a non-negotiable. The size of it is immense, and the cost would be huge. But they just not compromising that you're just going to kill and seriously injure your community. It's an interesting one. I showed that engineer a memo that I used at Vic Roads, which I'll show you. I'll share with all of you. Actually, I'll tell you a little story. I'll find the memo. So I was managing. I was in the road safety engineering department in Vic Roads, Victorian, and there was a big congestion easing program. It was called Keep Melbourne Moving, and essentially the program, like, it was Australia's biggest investment in congestion easing or something like that. And it was a whole lot of traffic operations engineers and planners working out how to improve car traffic congestion and the like. And what they discovered was that there was this really great way that you could improve that at a network perspective, which was to remove roundabouts and replace them with traffic signals. And I don't disagree with their modeling and the like, and you know, it's very car orientated, but it you know, these outer suburban arterial areas, and they were saying, well, yeah, that roundabout is a big point of congestion and the like during peak hours, and if we remove them and put traffic signals, we can get all this benefit. And so they were coming up with all these designs, and they were sending them into the traffic ops head office area and to our area, the road safety area, and we were to do road safety assessments of that. And what they were thinking we'd do was look at the you know, the traffic signal phasing, the line marking, the you know, have they got pedestrian crossings on the right legs? Have they got, you know, bike storage boxes? And you know, that sort of level of detail is what they're expecting. We did all that. We checked all of that, but then we also started putting this memo on them, and we did some extra calculations. So this is the memo. Kathy, hopefully you can see a memo on your screen.
Yeah, oh, good.
So from the Road Safety Department, blah, blah, blah. This is a template one that I took when I left. The Road Safety Department's analysed this project as increasing crashes as follows. Project life, 20 years. So you put a life on a project in order to do economic analysis. You need to have a lifespan of a project. Like any investment, you've got to think about it like that. Number of deaths attributed to this project, 2.3. We put little pictures of people just to remind them it's not a stat, it's people. Number of serious injuries attributed to this project, 12.6. Statement of acceptance. The above road trauma is accepted by and regional manager, regional director, whoever was managing that area, and we'd send it back. Now, that caused a fair bit of an issue. We certainly were called into the executive director's office and the deputy chief executive, and some quite heated discussions about you know, what is the role of a road authority and competing demands and managing things, and the advantages of easing congestion and improving people's lives, and that, you know, well, these are going to be the best traffic signals, and you know, people have to take some personal responsibility. And it's like, well, yeah, no, really nobody ever argued with our assessment and prediction on the death and serious injury. So it wasn't that people disagreed that that was going to happen. It became a question of what the role of a road authority was. And I said, listen, okay, if this is the decision that is going to be made, somebody should sign off and say that we have weighed up the value of easing congestion against killing and seriously injuring our community, and we will take the easing congestion. And sign off, you know, stand up and sign that. They just don't want it presented in that way. They like to hide it. They like to blame the individuals. And anyway, so we were not, you know, very directly told to never write that again and never issue it and the like. But what we saw was you know, there was a change in culture, and it was coming from, you know, other jurisdictions doing, and passionate people in New Zealand also doing similar things. And safe system assessments now give us this opportunity to present that idea probably in a less aggressive and a more palatable way, which still gets our point across and probably helps you keep your job. Not that I lost my job over that, but yeah. Anyway, so I think it's sometimes important. I mean, it's like any sort of activism, I suppose. It's sometimes important to go and put something like that down. But yeah. Anyway, sorry, I've drifted off topic. I mean, it's on topic, but I've drifted off the slides. Let me see where we're at. Any questions while I do that? I think.
No, I think some people want to use your memo, and then have you got a job for them after they?
Well, I'm happy to certainly, get in there. Funnily enough, the ability to calculate that is not hard. I mean, there's actually quite a few tools very easily available to help you do that. It's just about presenting it in that sort of in-your-face form, if you want to, in the right spots. And people, yeah, they get the idea. Anyway, okay, where were we? We're having a look at this crazy, exciting turbo roundabout. That got me thinking about the fact that the Dutch don't compromise, and that memo wouldn't be needed over there because of the understanding of that. But
Ken, sorry, just a quick one. You're getting questioned on I thought the Dutch drove on the right-hand side. This layout is left, the previous one. Yep. Give
a prize to that person.
Yeah.
So I flipped the photo. I mirrored the photo because I thought it would just boggle people's mind too much if I did this and it was right-hand drive. Well done.
Well, there you go.
You can't get much past this group, can you?
No.
Okay. This one's fun. Like, this is fun in a whole lot of ways. It's a concept. It hasn't been built. But what I love is that people are now rethinking the whole idea of a large signalised intersection. They're saying, well, we've got to do something to break up this continuous straight run through, high speed, people just tuned out, running red lights. And I'm sure some of you have run through a red light and not realized until you were well through it and just all gone, oh my God, did I just run through a red light? Or you've sort of gone, you're driving along and you go, oh, I don't remember the last 5 minutes of driving. That's part of being human. I mean, we tune in and out. We don't want people to do that. We're trying to encourage and put facilities in to stop them driving in those states, but that's pretty much it. And plus, I don't expect many of you are, partaking in these recreational drug activities that would enhance that. Maybe some of you are, anyway, each to their own. But and then driving vehicles, and we're in such a challenging state. But something like this, I think, presents a lot of hope, because it's going to continue to maintain pretty much it will maintain pretty much the same capacity throughput as the large signalised intersection. Yet you get that thing of these vehicles approaching are going to have to navigate around something, and the angles are better. There'll be something to wake them up and the like. So we're really talking about how do we influence that severity of crash at these intersections. There's the squircle, as they call it. It's the squircle, again, concept. The idea is just as good. And I love the fact that we're starting to talk about these raised platforms, and it's such now a go-to, because I've been running this course for a long time, 10 years on this one and 20 years on road safety audit training, and the idea of a raised safety platform on a major arterial, as I mentioned, it's outrageous. Even 5 years ago, people were just like, are you insane? What are you, like, no. But now we're at a point where people understand this is not like an urban speed hump necessarily. You can alter the grade and you can manage these things. And that's what the region came up with at their site. You can see there that they concluded traffic signals were probably right for a variety of reasons, which a lot of you came up with as well, which was the cost, the unbalanced flow, the actually fact that I haven't given you this context. There are signals further down the road, signals back. So it's a continuity of intersection treatment style thing. And they said, but we know that they're not going to perform as like they will do a good job at reducing the likelihood of crashes, but the severity is still there. So what can we do? Can we try raising some intersections to some shallower grades? Now, what they're doing here is they're addressing the speed of the bullet vehicle, right? These are the bullet vehicles, and they want to slow them down. They're not worried about the target vehicles. They're the ones coming out. They don't need to slow those down because they're not the ones doing the damage, right? Because it's a T intersection. If it was a crossroad, it might be a different story. They just want to bring the speeds down of these. They want to wake them up a bit with some vertical deflection, and they want to slow them down. What speed? Their predominant crash that they were considering was vehicles coming out or vehicles going in and being struck by these vehicles. What speed do you think they were trying to get the bullet vehicle down to? Put that in the chat as a bit of a guess. Okay, I'm seeing some good answers here around the, I'm seeing everything from 30, 40, 50. Now, they were particularly interested in vehicle-to-vehicle right-angle crashes. And if you go back to your safe system tolerance speeds, that's a 50 km/h threshold speed. Now, this is their major arterial, and it is a big traffic route, a freight route, a bus route. And so they were trying to, keep speeds up. And so they were just mainly wanting to get it within those tolerable levels for that particular crash. There are pedestrians crossing, there's a pedestrian crossing here. So that theoretically you'd want it at a 30 or below. And a lot of you said 30, and I'm sure you were thinking around that sort of crashes. But the particular one is that right angle crash between passenger vehicles. The area is just heavily dominated by that type of crash along that whole route. So you can sort of understand that. So they built that, and they used advisory speeds there at 50. There's a safe system snippet on that one for you if you use your PDF of the slides and have a look if you want. You can see there you got vehicles slowing on the approach. Here's another photo of it. Advisory speeds of 50, slow vehicles at the conflict point, wake them up. Here I was with a colleague doing a post-opening road safety audit of it, just checking bits and pieces. And I love this photo we took as we were waiting for it to get dark out there. And green lights, vehicle braking. Isn't that wonderful? Like approaching the conflict point, the area of risk, and slowing down. Some of the traffic ops people get really angry about this. They're like, it's not inefficient. It's not, why are we slowing everybody down? And the thing is that you go, well, if it was a roundabout, everybody would slow down. And nobody seems to, why are we slowing everybody down? Yeah, maybe it goes back to that congestion one and why they were ripping some out. But anyway, generally, it's just the fact that it's new. People aren't used to it. It's not what has been done for the last 50 years. So yeah, they're getting annoyed. People got really worried in the development design of this about these risks that they conjured up in their mind. And I mean, any innovation, good rigorous risk assessment and risk management process. But really, like, the concerns were things like people hitting these raised platforms and flying up into the air like Dukes of Hazzard, that buses would be rolling over, or passengers would be flying around in the bus, that there'd be this, catastrophic amount of rear end death and serious injury crashes. That what else did they come up with? I mean, those were some of them. None of that actually plays out. Oh, noise. I was like, oh my God, this is going to be, residents in the area will never be able to sleep. The noise will be out of control. None of it has actually played out when these have been implemented. And, they're all a fear of sort of the unknown, I suppose. Another random side advantage of these, which wasn't sort of as expected, was a narrowing of the dilemma zone. So the dilemma zone is a traffic engineering term, which is the point in time and space where a vehicle is in a dilemma as to whether to put the foot down and run through the orange or to brake. And with the introduction of the raised platform, the narrowing of the dilemma zone, it was beautiful, because most people in that former dilemma zone were just like, oh, well, I'm going to stop because I got to navigate this raised bit as well. What a wonderful little thing. Dilemma zone, isn't that a great name as well? There's a few terms in traffic and road safety engineering. I just go, whoever named that deserves some sort of wonderful prize. Dilemma zone, trap lane, they're two of my absolute favorites. Anyway, now it's not just obviously that one that's been done. You got one just outside Hamilton there, or in Hamilton, Thomas Gordonton intersection, which is fantastic. Worth a trip to Hamilton if you don't live there, just to go and look at it. And we're seeing this on pretty major roads as well now. So it's not, just something for the minor roads either. I mean, this one is this road carries 52,000 vehicles a day, buses, major bus route, major sort of heavy vehicle route, big traffic roads, and it's got raised platforms slowing vehicles down. I'd like to see that at 30 for the slip lane pedestrian one, but they seem to have gone 50. But 50 through that bit is okay for what that road is. But I do just love this because this used to be a roundabout, and it was removed for a congestion easing program 15 years after we were having to write that memo. Another congestion easing program, they keep coming. And a safe system assessment was done on this one. And the safe system assessment showed that it was going to increase risk and suggested raised intersection, and it was taken on. So I'm like, this is amazing. Thank you. Safe system assessment's doing their job. I don't think a road safety audit would have done that. And some good guidance on race safety platforms. There's lots of technical intricacies around race safety platforms. I like there's some good BIC roads, road design notes. So 307 is a good one. It talks about ramp grades, drainage, lighting, signage, advanced warning, all sorts of good stuff. And then, of course, the New Zealand crew put this one together for Austroads, which is effectiveness and implementation of road safety platforms. Wonderful information in there, lots of good case studies, so worth a read. And there's actually a nice 1 hour webinar module on it, presented by some wonderful New Zealanders. So worth having a look at that as well.
Ken, popping some of that those resources into Moodle for people, but if you go back 2 slides, that one.
It's only one Wally.
One Wally. Thank you. Are those mountable curb channels?
It's a good question. Semi-mountable, I think. So they are. I don't know exactly why they would have selected that in the design. Good detailed question.
And a bit of chatter on the noise, so that's all good. But with raised safety platforms being required to be 6 metres long with stop bars on the approach side, what's thoughts on potential reduction of sight line to the intersection?
That'll be a bit of a case-by-case basis. There's some detail on that. We've certainly seen variations of that configuration. So stop bars have been done on the platform. It's not as common, but before it, different lengths of it, and then sight line to the hold line at the intersection and the like. So there's a raft of design intricacies around this. Have a look at this document, have a look at that road design note, and then worth having a chat to some of the Hamilton City Council people who did this one. Simon Crowther, is it? Yeah, Simon down there. He loves to chat about this one. He'll take you out for a tour, no doubt. I'm happy to put you in contact with people and show you some designs if you're getting into it. Really, this course, though, I'm just talking about the principle in general of it. The detailed design of it is a many-day exercise in its own right.
No, it's been covered in the chat. It's all good.
Okay.
But yes, we better carry on. We've got less than 30 minutes to go.
Okay. Well, I'll do this one quickly. I won't labour on it because it's the same sort of principles of people just questioning the standard ways of operating. This is in a high-speed intersection in a rural environment, and the region really sort of saying, well, poor safety performance, high speed, high risk. We want to do something. We'd like to build a roundabout here, and this is a sort of drone shot of it. This little hut here is a telecommunication exchange building, and you can see there you've got your properties fairly close up, and so the roundabout was just going to be a major challenge there. Get your roundabout in and the size and your reverse curves on the approach, and calculating that out, and sort of ticking over $8 million for the roundabout at this location, with all of the lighting, drainage, civil works. Moving this beast was like over $1 million in its own right. Just the dollars were racking up, taking lots of land needed. So they said, oh no, we can't do that. That's the arterial road. They're having deaths and high level serious injuries occurring in all these typical ways, and they're sort of like, well, okay, can't afford the roundabout, seems, within the program. So what else? And then the usual things came out. What about a right turn lane? What about improving the lighting? What about a rural intersection activated speed? These are all good and worthwhile things to look at, but they're kind of reducing the likelihood of crashes mainly. Maybe the REORs, the speed reduction might do a bit on the severity, but really we're not doing that. But we really want to slow vehicles down to within those 50 km/h tolerable speeds or below. Anyway, so they said, well, what about a smaller roundabout? Do we need to be taking all of that land, doing this and moving everything? And so they said, what about if we do a smaller roundabout? You see there, you've got the tiny little roundabout. You've got a big concrete apron around it, and you've got straight approaches to it. And again, they've elected to use some raised platforms on the approach and raise the intersection bit to try to get that slowing down. see some ramp grades here. I can send you the detailed designs if you're interested in this. We actually wrote a design guide for compact roundabouts for the Victorian government, which I'm happy to share with you, because there's a lot of design thinking required in doing something like this. But again, at a principle level for this course, the fact that this got built, and it got built at, well, under half the cost of what a full roundabout would have cost, is pretty exciting. And you can see some raised platforms on the approach, raising there. You can see the little roundabout in the middle, and then the concrete apron is so the large vehicles can sweep around here and mount it, and you've got a bit of mounting will happen there and a few other areas in order to cater for those. That's often why you need such a big roundabout, to really get that large vehicle to go around it. I mean, there's other sort of points around that. Anyway, I just think it's good. It's that just sort of continued thinking of, we've got to get speeds down, we've got to get angles improved. And we know a whole lot of treatments that'll tweak around the edges, but if we can do something like this, we're in a pretty wonderful position. Okay, I'm going to pop up a little poll, and yeah, what do we? Maybe we're not. Oh, there it is. Look at that. True or false? Traffic signals are not safe system. True, false, or unintelligible question, meaning the question doesn't really make sense, or what? Hang on. Yeah, that's yes. Question doesn't make sense. It's not. You haven't thought through the wording of your question. I'll give you a second on that, and then I'm going to rip through a few other bits, and then we're going to give you an assignment. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ended the poll. And I'm going to share answers. What do we see? A few people on true, lots on false, lots on unintelligible question. And unintelligible question is probably a good one to go with, because for two reasons. One is I've gone with not safe system, like it's a binary thing. And at the start I said, we don't really talk like that. We talk about doesn't have good alignment with safe system principles, or has good alignment with safe system principles. The second is I gave you no context whatsoever. It's not the traffic signals that are safe system aligned or not. It's the context of those. And so that's where I think the people who said false, you can have thumbs up. Now, the people who said true, you can probably have thumbs up as well, because you probably had the specific context in mind and jumped to that conclusion. So everybody can be a winner out of that. Okay, but I did put that up for one particular reason, which is that I have had people leave the course and somehow then say that traffic under the safe system, we can never install traffic signals. I was like, whoa, how did you get that conclusion? Think about the context of it, how it's done, the speeds, a whole lot of different things. Lane departure crashes. I mean, we've got long, straight roads all throughout New Zealand, and you have lots of windy roads too, but long, straight roads. And what we're seeing, they've got center lines, sometimes they have edge lines, sometimes they have sealed shoulders, but we just see continuing death and serious injury along these. And it's not, they're not clustered in particular spots. They are distributed along the entire routes. And so, we just see this challenge where we've got risk just distributed along these. People fall asleep, use their phone, drop their coffee in their lap, doing all sorts of wild things within the vehicle rather than, concentrating on the road. And we're trying to minimize that, but it's continuing to happen. So you've got to start to rethink what you do, because having a line sort of separating death and serious injury isn't quite going to cut it when mistakes are inevitable. And poles, trees are particularly hazardous. We talked about the sort of side impact crash tolerance of vehicles is around that 30 kilometre per hour mark. And when we get up to speeds, even around 60 kilometres per hour, which this is predicted at 60 kilometres per hour based on the footage frames and the like, you see just the violence of this sort of thing. And that's only about 60 kilometres an hour in that range. So you can think at 100 kilometres an hour or 90 or like, it is unsurvivable violence to the vehicle occupants. And if we clear out all of those fixed hazards, we certainly do reduce risk, but we don't eliminate risk. And we see that rollover becomes more of an issue. And people go beyond these. And what we've sort of discovered is that clearing areas of fixed hazards gives really good benefit at the start, and then it sort of asymptotes out, and you don't receive a huge amount of benefit as you keep clearing these areas. And there's a few different sort of graphs that sort of reiterate that. But we know clear zones or cleared areas are not necessarily a safe place to be because of people going beyond whatever you clear or rollovers happening. So they don't have the highest alignment with safe system principles. They're still pretty valid for a sort of 4 to 5 meters if you can do it. But the reality is it's very hard to create clear zones in the real world because cost, tree removal, they're two big ones. It's just not, your ability to do that becomes really, really hard. And now that we have extremely good, flexible road safety barrier systems for passenger vehicles, at least, they're just exceptionally good and far better than clearing roads. So we wouldn't want to see roads like this built anymore with big clear zones and then hazards right at that sort of 9.1 meters or 10.1 or whatever the calculation of the clear zone is. The new Australia's Guide to Road Design Part 6 sort of has a new way of looking at it. Clear zones are out and sort of rethinking about that. But really at a very high level, we know that continuous barrier systems in the centre and on the outside of your road is your highest alignment with safe system principles. And it sort of goes down from there. So that's in your notes. You can have a look at that. But you really would, trying to create that road where people can fall asleep and leave the road and hit the barrier system and be contained in either way within those tolerable energies. Gee, we don't want them to fall asleep, but they will. You've got to think about the specifics of your design, and it gets quite intricate in this. And, pull over areas, breakdown bays, maintenance breaks, and the like. And I just popped that up there to remind you that it's not just as easy as, just roll it out. You've got to really think and design and be quite specific with that. Last thing that I'll mention again is just more that thinking around management of energy in incidents. This is a crash that happened in Mildura. It happened at about 2 a.m. It had 4 young males in an old car with next to no safety features. You know the scenario. It happens a lot. It's usually tragic. In this case, when they went through, this was a roundabout, so we just talked about how awesome roundabouts are. This one, they sort of knew it was there and they've gone into it at about 95 kilometres an hour. Well, I suppose any other vehicle, it was 2 a.m, but any other vehicle would have been slowed down and looking around and maybe we've got some advantages there. But they left the road, they hit the power pole. The power pole had a raptor cushion on it, which is one of these things. And they all survived. Minor injuries was the worst of it. That's phenomenal. Like, for a crash of that speed, you saw it the 60km/h one before, and then 9. The reason really is the way that this product works. And I'm not, particularly promoting this product. I'm promoting the concept of energy management within the road environment. This doesn't just crush like a sort of goalpost pad. It's not connected to the utility pole, and as a vehicle hits it, it's got that angle to it. It rotates. Okay, and so what it does is it takes the vehicle's energy and rotates it and moves it along. Sort of like in martial arts, they take the energy of the punch and move it along. Not that I do martial arts. I watch karate videos and stuff. It rotates. So it's about energy management. And if you can't fit a barrier system in, and I think these are just kind of really amazing sort of engineering feats. Let's not do that quiz, because let's give them an assignment, Kathy.
Let's, Ken. And you've mentioned Dukes of Hazzard and you've mentioned Karate Kid. So
you can see what my
your vintage.
my life, my relaxing time is watching. Anyway, carry on.
All right, I will carry on. Let me just do a quick check of questions. Yep. No, the chat's going off.
I'm gonna you tell them the assignment. I'm gonna look at that for stop intersections in.
Oh no, you're not. Okay, Jeff, I fixed the quiz. There's no more checking business, just FYI. So quiz module 2 is there. Nice and quick one for you. And in module 2, geez, I've been busy. We've popped in the Austroads effectiveness and implementation of raised safety platforms document, the road design note from Vic Roads about raised safety platforms, the raised safety platforms webinar, that's another hour, very good listening. I've even watched that one. The road design note on the compact roundabouts is all there. So there's a whole bunch of additional resources for you to keep you busy on the weekend. But here is the module 2 assignment. There it is there. And look, I've made this work properly too now, Ken, and I look like a student. There we go. Now, so here it is here. Oh, I did already have that ready to go.
So while this comes up, you're going to be selecting an intersection around your house or near your work or whatever you want. And you're not actually going to have to go there. You can look at it on Street View, or you can, if it is out in front of your house, you can look out your window, or on the walk that you do, whatever. It's just going to be analysing a bit of an intersection you choose. For the next one, we're going to choose it for you, but for this one, it's pretty good. And you've got instructions in there in the Word document, so step-by-step instructions. Choose that intersection. Fill out the information below. Anything highlighted yellow, you're going to have to fill out. You're going to have a little look around your intersection, either via Street View or just having a look at it if it's very easy and close by. And then fill out all the information on the next table. So let's jump to the next. Oh, actually, sorry, go back up. I missed that. We want a link to that intersection. So like a Street View link, or even the coordinates or something, just so we can have a quick look as well when we come to mark this. So then you're going to go with 3 columns here. 3 columns: exposure, likelihood, and severity. And this is what this assignment is about: is can you categorize things into exposure, likelihood, and severity? Have you got your head around that? So what we ask you to do is have a look at the intersection and put in there 3, or between 1 and 3, 1 at a minimum, up to 3 factors that influence the likelihood, the exposure to crashes. The exposure is first, okay? And what are those kind of things? I mean, that could be the number of legs that come into the intersection, the fact that it's on the desire line for pedestrians and lots of pedestrians cross there. It's something that's going to influence the number of people, the number of cars, the number of motorcycles, the number of bikes, the number of people, the number exposed to it. Really think number. When you see exposure, think number. Then you're going to come up with 1 to 3 things that influence the likelihood of crashes. Now, this could be, the signs are faded, the warning signs are faded, there's sight line impediments, there's a see-through effect, there's bad surface conditions, whatever it is. So between 1 and 3 for that. And then you're going to come up with between 1 and 3 things that influence the severity of crash. Now, remember, severity means that a crash is happening. And what can we influence with the severity there? Well, it's going to involve speeds, angles, mass of vehicle, vulnerability of those being struck, and those sorts of things. That's all you've got to play with, really. Biomechanics, energy management. That's what we're sort of thinking through. So what are the factors that are influencing how bad the crashes are going to be? Then we want you to just come up with one thing, just one thing that you could change that would influence that particular risk element. One thing that would change the exposure to crashes. One thing that will change. So that's one thing that would change the number of people that are exposed to crashes. One thing that would change the likelihood of crashes. And one thing that would change the severity of crashes. And that's it. And so you don't need to cancel your weekend plans to do this one. It shouldn't take a huge amount of time. You can do it at your desk, no worries. Pop them in. PDF it is nice. If you PDF the thing and then upload it, add submission, and when's it due?
No, that's wrong. I've given you too long for that one. It's due next Tuesday, not the Tuesday after. So not in 11 days, because the idea is, that you get this one in, and Ken, you'll have a look at them, and you might get someone to show us their intersection and talk it through in the next session, so that we all get a good understanding. We know what exposure, likelihood and severity all means before we get into our other assignment. So I will change that due date. Go me. Yes.
So maybe do cancel your weekend plans. No, I don't. It's still definitely don't need to cancel your weekend plans. It'll take you 10 minutes, 15 minutes, maybe. It shouldn't take you too much longer than that. Do the quiz. There's a quiz there, as Kathy said.
Yes.
And we want to give you 2 minutes to do it now. Although I want to put this up because we just posted this online on our Friday Safe System sketches.
Breaking news. Okay, yeah. And
I wanted to see if people understood it and found it funny. Or is it just, have we gone loopy in the Safe System Solutions office?
I like how we're doing feedback after we've
that's right.
Put it out there.
Put it out there. Anyway, I'll explain the joke. Or is that
no? Well, let's give people a minute. And there's a question before we get into the joke. Does the intersection have to be a specific type of intersection, i.e., signalised or T intersection with a give way? No. It can be any intersection.
Anything you want. There's no restriction on this. You're free to do whatever you want.
Okay. We've got a smiley face from Ben.
Ben likes it.
Ben likes it. Not sure funny is the right word.
Okay. Yeah, all right.
All right, so next week we'll do feedback before.
in road design, can I draw on this? Have I got my pen to draw on this? Oh no, I'm on the wrong screen. Yeah, there it is.
There you go.
in road design, or in the designing of a road, this area where you got an off ramp and then that's called the gore area. I don't know why it's called the gore area. It's always been its name. It's called the gore area, and this is Al Gore. So it's in the
gore area.
We better end this webinar.
Yeah, we're still recording.
All right. Have a wonderful weekend,
everyone. Thank you. That was a terrific session. Love it. Yes, any dramas, send us an email. You're gonna have to cut this off at the end. Luckily people don't watch to the end. It's all good. Have a great weekend. Bye.
Bye.